G'day, welcome back to the channel. Breaking news! The court has thrown out RDQ's challenge to the FAA's remote ID rule, and I'm not surprised. In fact, back in October 2021, this is what I said. Immediately with the RaceDay Quads petition was that they were relying on the Fourth Amendment of the US Constitution. I knew immediately that would fail. And let's have a look at some media reports on this. Reuters have got a report out already. It says US Appeals Court upholds FAA rules on drone identification. Now, there's a really important piece here which sort of summarizes it all, if I can find it. Where is it? Here we go. Judge Cornelia Pillard, writing for the unanimous 3-0 panel, said, drones are coming. Lots of them. They are fun and useful, but their ability to pry, spy, crash, and drop things poses real risks. Free-for-all drone use threatens air traffic, people and things on the ground, and even national security. And I would say to Judge Cornelia Pillard, bullshit, utter crap. There goes the monetization on this video. But honestly, this is the problem we face now. When RDQ brought their challenge to the rule, as I say, you saw it just before, I said it won't prevail on constitutional grounds. For the reasons I give, the Constitution is no longer a protection, because all the government has to do is say safety and security, and the Constitution gets set aside. So even if the judge had found this does breach the Constitution, I am almost 100% sure the court would have ruled, in this case we're going to set aside that because the safety and security of the nation is an overriding thing. We must always think of that first. So it was never going to prevail on that basis. I didn't think so. I was right. I hate being right when things like this happen. But I think the judge's statement here shows the real problem that we have. The real problem is the people making the rules, the decisions in the courts, they don't have a clue what's really going on out there. Now, this judge says that drones are coming. True, that's true. Drones are coming, but not our drones. Our drones are already here. We have already reached peak drone. I would say that probably 12 months ago, there were more people flying drones than there are today. We had this massive surge in interest in drones, and then it tapered off. And a lot of the drones that people have bought now sit in a cupboard or somewhere unused. They get flogged off at a garage sale, are broken. We're not flying as many drones today as we did 12 months ago. So we've reached peak drone, which means the threat, the alleged threat that these drones produce is lower today than it was a year ago. But drones are coming, but they're the commercial drones. These are the 50+ pound delivery drones that we're all promised, and all the other things moving around the airspace. These are big drones. These are dangerous drones. If these things fall from the sky, then you really are in trouble. But our little recreational drones, somewhere between 250 grams and a couple of kilos, they are not the problem. But the judges believe this. This is what they've been told by the drone industry. They've been told it by the media. They've been told it by people who know nothing. These drones are the problem. But they don't distinguish between the real problems, the commercial drones and their massive, great, heavy things they are with their flesh-cleaving props, and recreational drones, which, let's face it, I'm going to say it again, I've said it so often, I'm so glad I can still say it. In the entire history of mankind, nobody has ever died as a result of the recreational use of a multi-rotor drone. Yet we've got judges telling us they're going to crash and drop things and pose real risk to air traffic, people and things on the ground. They are so far out of touch. And this is where we as a community have fallen on our face. We haven't educated. We've allowed the media and the drone industry to just spread all this fear, uncertainty and doubt, all this bullshit, so that the decision makers are misinformed. They don't know the reality of the situation. They don't know how safe we are. They just believe what they're told. And we suffer as a consequence. So if we were really going to challenge, if the Americans were really going to challenge this remote ID rule, they should have first of all educated the decision makers so we didn't get silly statements like this. And there's more evidence of how badly these people are misinformed in the actual document from the court. Let's have a look at that. On page 19 of the court document, it says here, Brennan suggests pilots might use a drone's control station inside a home, or fly a drone in its curtilage below the tree line out of public view. But the rule does not mandate remote ID for drone flights indoors, thus exempting flights inside a home, barn or other private building. Nor does it require remote ID for drone flights in a netted outdoor enclosure, and nothing in the administrative record establishes that drones covered by the remote ID rule are usually flown from or in private spaces not visible to others, making drone systems potential use is therefore no basis for facial invalidation. In fact, I don't know what that is anyway. But what the judge doesn't understand here, the judge thinks that you can fly your drone indoors without remote ID. So what's the problem? What has he's failed, or the judges have failed to understand, is that you can be inside and fly outside. You can sit inside at the window with your control station and fly your drone outside. Now, yes, because your drone is outside, you need to have remote ID fitted. And if that's a standard equipment remote ID rather than add-on transmitter, then that remote ID system is broadcasting your position from inside your house, where you have a reasonable expectation of privacy because you're inside. So this does breach, the judge says, oh, there's nothing wrong here. Well, there is something wrong, because if I want to fly my drone outside in my yard while sitting inside, my privacy has been breached, because that remote ID system is broadcasting my location inside my house, where I have my reasonable expectation of privacy. I don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy outside my house, because there's a ruling earlier on here which says that, where it says, let me just go up a bit and look at that. It says, Brennan does not dispute the general visibility to onlookers of drones in the sky. Drones fly in the open, and people ordinarily lack reasonable expectation of privacy for activities conducted outdoors or in fields. Open fields beyond the curtilage of a home, whether or not privately owned, are not among protected places. That's fine. It says here, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in the movement of objects outside a residence where they can be viewed from a public route or adjoining premises, nor activities conducted in the curtilage of a home or even behind a hedge or fence if they can be viewed by naked eye observation from an aircraft lawfully operating above the property. So your drone flying in your garden, if someone could see it from an aeroplane flying overhead lawfully, you have no expectation of privacy. But if you're sat inside in the window of your house, beside the fire on a cold winter's day, flying your drone out in the garden, you do have an expectation of privacy, because you cannot be seen from an aircraft flying over. You're inside your house. So this would violate what the judges have said here. The judges are not aware of this. They don't know that we can fly indoors, we can be indoors while our drone's flying outdoors. That was not considered. The judges are ignorant of some of the really pivotal key facts. Now, is this grounds for an appeal? No. It's not, because, as I said, anything related to a constitutional protection will be dismissed, even if it's found to be valid. But there's another point in this paper that I noticed too, which we should look at. Now, on page 22, it says, as a practical matter, remote ID messages are not readily available for collection from a centralised location, but are detectable only within the ambit of a local radio signal, which Brennan calculates to be about a 1 mile radius around the drone. Now, this is because RDQ were alleging that the data that was being broadcast by remote ID could be collected and then archived or then used as a surveillance method by a central authority, and that the courts have ruled, no, it can't, because the information only goes a mile, so it can't be collected, which again shows the ignorance of the courts. They're obviously unaware of things like Flight Radar 24 or the Open Glider Network. These are networks of citizen-owned radio receivers that operate around the globe and collect information about aircraft that are flying around, and then bring it back to a central location where you or anyone else can get our phone or our computer and see all over the world where aircraft are flying. Now, there's no reason not to believe that this would happen, or this will happen with drones as well. Once remote ID is implemented, there will be DroneNet. And people will use the same software-defined radios and Raspberry Pis to create a network of points where these drones will be detected by the remote ID. Now, there will be so many of them that this 1 mile limitation in the remote ID range that the judges are relying on here to avoid that it's not a factor, because there'll be so many of these points picking them up. You can then see a drone from half a world away. Even though it can only transmit for 1 mile, the nearest DroneNet receiver connected to DroneNet globally will enable you to see all the drones that are flying around. So the judge, again, ignorance. We haven't educated these people enough to realise that the arguments they are using to diffuse this challenge they're not valid. They're not valid, because this will happen. So again, it's an education thing. The community has failed to educate decision makers, legislators, regulators, court judges. We haven't educated them because we're too lazy and we're too disorganised. We sit on our fat bums and complain about things. We don't get off those fat bums and get out there and speak up as a unified voice. But we've got the FPV Freedom Coalition. I watch their meetings, and sometimes I attend them online. It's like this many people for the whole of the USA, and I'm not even in the USA, but there's a tiny handful of people there. It's nothing. And we claim to be a large group, but We don't act like a large group. All the DJI flies, they don't give a damn. They just want to go out on a weekend and fly their drones. They're not, they'll either ignore the regulations or they won't. And this brings me to another point. We should be challenging this on the basis that where's the proof? Now, these allegations that have been made that drones are going to spy and pry and fall on people and endanger airspace and damage stuff on the ground, drop things, I've seen virtually no evidence of this. Now, we've been flying recreational military-rated drones for over 10 years now. Where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? I believe the best way to challenge this thing is to say, well, if you are going to impose a cost, and this is a cost, whether you're buying a new drone or whether you're having to retrofit an old drone with a transmitter, it's a cost. It's an unreasonable imposition of cost on people without any justification. We demand the justification. This so-called, this will happen. Well, no, we don't want promises. We don't want claims. We don't want hypothetical cases. We want proof. We've had 10 years to amass a huge amount of data as to the real risk associated with drones, recreational drones. And the reality is the risk is incredibly low. We have not seen one death, as I say. We don't see property damage. We don't even see significant injury from these drones. Yet we're going to have go to all the cost and expense of fitting these transmitters to our drones. So I think the government, we should be challenging the government, because remember that the FAA has been directed to do this by government. They don't have a choice. The government's told them, you do this. The real fight is with the US government. You need to go back to them and say, look, you people work for us. You are there to protect us, not only from perceived risks such as spying, prying and dropping things, but from unreasonable costs, unreasonable impositions on our freedoms and our rights to anonymity. And I don't see that the government has mounted a sufficiently strong case to justify the remote ID rule. Now, the FAA has to do what it's told, but the government, where you should be placing your argument, you should be saying, no, we're not going to do it, because you haven't proven to us that we need to do it. You're so sure of this, show us the evidence. Where is the scientifically conducted, independently peer-reviewed risk assessment that proves your case that we're going to need remote ID? And more importantly, where is the proof that people, bad actors, will be stopped by remote ID? Having remote ID on a drone doesn't stop it doing anything bad. You can still do all the things that the judge claims will happen with these drones, prying, spying, dropping stuff, damaging things, killing people. That can all be done with a drone that's got remote ID fitted. So what is the point of remote ID again? It doesn't serve any purpose except to make our lives more expensive and to infringe on our personal freedoms. That's where you guys in America should be focusing your efforts, and focusing them as a mass, as a group, as a unified body to represent drone flies. I don't think it's going to happen. The biggest problem we have is that we're all a bunch of lazy sods who always want someone else to do the work, and we can't be bothered getting off our backsides and lending anything other than a few dollars to the fight. Unfortunately, that's just the way we are. Any group of people, it's always 5% of the people do 95% of the work. And that's what's happening in this fight for freedoms and rights and against the tyranny of unreasonable costs. So that's where I see it, guys. That's my position. I'm sorry. I wish I lived in America. I'd be out there banging on every politician's door, personally speaking to them, educating them. I would be doing my best to get the public and the regulators, the legislators, everybody aware of exactly how misinformed they are, how much bullshit is being spread by the drone industry and the media. So that's your job, but I don't think people are going to do it. I think you've lost this battle because you haven't put up a fight. RDQ, full thumbs up to them, full props to them, because they at least tried something. I knew it would be doomed to failure, but they tried something. I think they chose the wrong angle of attack, but they gave it a go. The only battle that is really, lost is the one that's never fought. So Tyler and Jonathan, you did your best, but you're fighting a formidable opponent. I've beaten formidable opponents on a number of occasions, but it requires a hell of a lot of work. And the drone community is just not interested, I don't think, in putting in that degree of work. So you get what you get. I wish you all the best in America, but my goodness, if I lived in America, I'd be considering giving up the hobby, because the cost to my liberty and freedom and anonymity is becoming too high. There you go. Go to the comments. Tell me off for what I've said, or agree with me. Do whatever you like. Spread this video around. I want the drone community to know why they have not prevailed in this case and what they need to do if they really want to put things right. Maybe we will get enough people interested and keen and willing to get off their backsides to do it. I can only live in hope. And I thank my Patreon supporters for making it possible for me to spend the time to look at these issues and provide some analytic content and hopefully help you guys with your cause. In the meantime, Thanks for watching, guys.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing our hobby. It must be terminated. Now!